some of the top basketball players, more than half of their income came from sponsorships, endorsements, and co-branding than it did that came from their contract or their NBA salary, for example. And to take an extreme example, as far as commanding an audience on the simp economy, the most popular OnlyFans creator last year, I talked about this before, made more money than the entire NBA payroll. I think it was something like $46 or $56 million. So this one chick, because she commanded the attention of an army of simps who are willing to pay $9.99 or $59.99 or whatever it is they're subscribed to monthly to see pictures of her butthole or her toes or whatever it is that she's doing, because she's commanded an audience that large, she gets paid more than an entire NBA sports league. Commanding an audience is a very, very profitable way to make good money. Bigger the audience, the more you can get compensated. So we're talking actors, musicians, social media influencers. The bigger the crowds, the more you get paid. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, famous actor, launched a tequila brand. If I were to try to launch a tequila brand, I might sell a couple bottles. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, no problem. He's gonna move boxes and crates and shipping containers of this stuff because he has an audience. This is how this thing sort of works. The bigger the audience, the more that you can get paid. I know a couple of people that paid $7,500 to go to a Taylor Swift concert when she was doing her most recent tour for 2 tickets. Going to a concert like that for $7,500 is big money. I remember when I was a kid, I still have all my concert stubs, Judas Priest, The Cult, Metallica, all that kind of stuff. Those were mostly like $19.99. And times have changed, for stuff like that. Again, you're famous, you're popular, you can command an audience, you have the attention of a lot of people, you can get paid very well. Again, actors, musicians, influencers, stuff like that. Some of the cons, well, there's a few. Most of the ones that are sort of tied into the matrix, that are sort of plugged into society's narrative, that are controlled by the strings that sort of pull them, they have handlers. They have to answer to somebody. You probably will remember during the incident in the States several years ago with the whole George Floyd and BLM and taking the knee during the national anthem and stuff like that. And a lot of these athletes were asked to do certain things that they don't necessarily agree with or that might be against their values. We saw athletes in record numbers dropping like stones during football matches, the English style soccer. Football is a very cardiovascular intense sport. You're running constantly. And as a result of being forced to take something that they were told was both safe and effective, a lot of these athletes during that time that followed up after these mass jabs just dropped dead during the game, right? I don't know that that's worth it to be at the control or whim of a handler. Sometimes the handler is a sports league manager. Sometimes the handler is, I don't know, some new protocol or something the government's imposing. Could also be governing bodies, could be your sponsors. We've seen athletes lose sponsorships because they don't support certain narratives that their handlers want them to co-sign. Okay. You get the idea, but it comes with some cons, right? If you have a handler, you can run into certain problems. Like, one of the examples that I used in here is look what happened to Andrew Tate, for example. He became a huge influence on young men and had a loud and opposing voice in the mainstream narrative. And he clearly didn't respond to any of the handlers. So they deplatformed him worldwide in a very coordinated attack over a 24-hour period in an attempt to steal his voice. He made this very clear. You lose Uber, you lose your bank accounts, you lose Airbnb, you lose Venmo, you lose PayPal, you lose Stripe. It's a coordinated effort by these handlers if they don't like you and they want to take away your voice. And that's how they do it. And when that didn't work, they stuck him in jail under house arrest, had millions of dollars of his assets seized, cars, cash, whatever he had lying around. And he was constantly accused and defamed in the mainstream media of being a human trafficker, a rapist, and more. None of these charges have stuck as far as I understand. Sounds like he's beaten most of them. But you'll take a strong hit to your reputation. That's just the way these things work, guys. So there's very strong pros. You can make some good money. Maybe, maybe the Bugattis and all the hypercars were worth it for them. But there are costs associated. There are cons to all of these things that you want to be aware of and that you want to navigate. Now, the last wealth creation method we're going to talk about is entrepreneurship. I'm going to change the QR code in the top left now, and it's going to link to the School of Entrepreneurship. This is by far my favorite. So if you're interested, you can scan that code in the top left and get started there. But I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that towards the end, because this is the one that I'm going to spend the most time on. I think that it has the most freedom, the most flexibility. It allows you the most maneuverability in your life. It lets you become anti-fragile, where when chaos hits you, if you're prepared for it, if you've trained for it, you can benefit from the chaos. That's not true for a lot of the other wealth creation methods, right? You're talking C-suite jobs, professionals, these high-end, high-ticket sales, STEM, and all these sort of things. They all come with some, in my opinion, significant downsides that aren't as worth the upsides when you compare it to entrepreneurship. I'm biased, of course, so take this with a grain of salt. I haven't worked for anybody in over 20 years now. I don't think I'm employable. I mean, if a friend of mine that ran a business that I like said, Rich, I need your help, and I had time in my schedule, or maybe I didn't feel like doing this anymore, for example, I might go and become an employee for him and his company for a certain period of time and, do something like that. But for the most part, I'm not employable. And I don't need to be employable. I don't need to bend the knee or to accept any of the terms or regulations or impositions that, quote unquote, they can impose on you. And I'll get into that in a little bit. All right, guys, I really hope that you enjoyed that clip. If you want to check out the full-length podcast episode, you can find that right over here. Also, make sure you visit my website over here, where you'll find my supplements, the opportunity to book me privately one-on-one for coaching, and most importantly, my new School of Unplugging, which you'll find on the courses tab. Newer to the channel, hit subscribe.